Well, welcome to this first Walk Through Voices from Walk Through the Bible of the new year, 2022. These Walk Through Voices videos, we just try to once a week share a few thoughts of what we're learning and seeing from God's Word with you. You know, we're encouraging you to read the Bible with us this year. We're kicking that off in the month of January when we're reading Genesis and Exodus. There's some reading schedules and some resources and the links with this video I would encourage you to use. We're reading this week, the first week of the year, Genesis chapters 1 through chapter 20. You know, the book of Genesis really can be divided into two sections. The first section is Genesis chapters 1 through 11. It's the story of God creating the world and then mankind seeming to try to unravel it. You know, God creating this perfect garden and then Adam and Eve sin, and it just seems like there's this downward spiral farther and farther away from God. And then Genesis chapter 12 through 50 is the story of a family line, Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and Joseph, and this promise that God gives to restore the people through this family line. The bridge between those two sections in the book of Genesis is Genesis chapter 12, the first 3 verses. Genesis 12, verse 1, the Lord said to Abram, we'll know Abram as Abraham later, the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse, and all people on earth will be blessed through you." Now that's a remarkable promise, isn't it? That Abram would be the blessing of a great nation. He would be blessed, that he would be the father of a great nation. But the first verse is pretty astonishing to me. God just shows up in Abram's life and says, go. Go from your country. Go from your people. Go from your father's household. Go. In the ancient world, those would have all been things, his country, his people, his father's house, that for Abram would have been a sense of security and comfort. It would have been what was safe and normal for Abram to have remained in his land with his father's house and his father's land. It would have been normal for Abram to just stay there and live his life. And God shows up and says, go. Go. Leave what's normal, leave what's safe, leave what's reasonable, and go, because God had a promise that he wanted to fulfill in Abram's life. And when I read Genesis chapter 12, when I get to verse 4, I always just hit the pause button because it's a remarkable statement. The first 3 words of Genesis chapter 12, verse 4 is simply this: so Abram went. That's it. God says, go, here's a promise, and all we're told, that there's no deliberation, that there's no questioning, there's no calculating, there's no figuring it out, just Abram went. He left. You know, I wonder sometimes at the start of a new year, like we're just experiencing, if we're a little bit more sensitive to the places in our life where God might be calling us to go. Maybe not physically pack up our things and move to another place, but to go out of the areas of our life where we find comfort and security and safety, where it feels normal, and to take a crazy risk for Him. To step into areas that may not make sense to anybody else, to think about where God might be calling us to do something for Him that requires this big, bold step of faith. Does anything come to mind when I say that? Is God calling you to step out, to leave, to go? You know, we get the privilege as we read the book of Genesis to see that as later Abraham, was faithful to go when God called, we see that God is always faithful to those He calls. When God calls someone to take a step, to risk, to go, to follow into this crazy life of faith, that God is always faithful. And as we start a new year together of 2022, maybe God's calling you, as you think about your life, as you think about this year, maybe God's calling you to go, to leave the comfort and the normal and the safe. And the question ultimately becomes is whether chapter 12, verse 4 could be true of us. So Abram went. No questions, just went. Could that be true of my life? Could that be true of your life? So as you read Genesis this month, I would encourage you to read, looking for those places where we see that when God calls, He is always faithful. Where's God calling you? And know that as you go, just like we'll read in Genesis, when God calls, He is always faithful.